Weapons. Interesting title for this one, and when it comes to an end, you kind of see why. Um, but let's start with the IMDb plot and see where this goes. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind the disappearance. Yes, that is the big question, and the big question going into this movie, as many of you may have seen in the trailers and so forth if you did watch them. So this one is definitely a new one, and just out recently. I was thinking about it as coming on here. You guys know that I like to do spoiler free, but I think with this one, I'm just not. I think, I want to talk about certain things, and I think I might give away certain things. So, unfortunately, this is not going to be spoiler free. Whether I give away the main thing or not, we'll see where this goes. But I will definitely probably give away some stuff. So, if you want to be completely spoiler free, I'm sorry. That's not going to happen this time. Anyway, so yeah, this one, and as I kind of mentioned on Twitter, I said between Together and Weapons, both movies very highly marketed and pushed. For me, for Promote Horror, I know Together we received a lot of stuff and a lot of push. Weapons, we didn't receive a lot of stuff. But I definitely saw plenty of the marketing for it as I was sharing my other stuff, and I shared plenty for it as well. That ended up doing well for both movies, but both movies did pretty well overall. Both movies seem to be liked by horror fans overall, so something has been done right there. This one definitely certainly did at the box office. I don't know that Together did hugely great at the box office, but still was very liked by horror fans. This one did rather well at the box office. So, with all that said, let's get into it. Obviously, like I said, if you've seen the trailer, just the way they kind of phrase it with the children disappearing at a specific time, and just the way the kids run out of the house, out of their houses, really didn't seem like they had to do a whole lot more. I know that if you watch all the trailers and whatever, they show some other stuff going on, but really all you had to do is keep it very simple. Say kids vanish at a certain time and have them run out of the house like they kind of do, and really you didn't really need to do too much. I think horror fans would have been curious enough to know what is going on here, and they could have left it at that. But they still did a good job, and lots of people want to see it, so it didn't really matter. But so this one, kind of sets up that you kind of see that mystery, early on, the kids doing their thing, running out of the houses. Then you kind of see a little bit of the chaos afterwards. Parents are searching. Parents want answers. All of the kids are in this one classroom. So, of course, the teacher is questioned. The teacher here is played by Garner. You guys seen she's done, several horror movies now. You've seen my reviews with her. A big fan of her. So, big fan of her being in this movie. And she did a really good job, as expected. And, she's the teacher here. So, she's getting questioned and taking the brunt of it, of does she know anything? Why was it her class? Why is it only her children? That kind of thing going on. And lots of questioning going on here early on. This is one of those movies where, we're going to meet her. We're going to meet a couple of other, important people here. We're going to meet a principal. We're going to meet one of the family members. We see a couple of family members here, but one played by Josh Brolin. I think I said that correctly. He's, becomes an important character and probably one of the parents that kind of stand out the most. That's really searching for his I forgot whether it was a daughter or son, but yeah, his child. Um, but we meet another character that little, he's a police officer, and I think a few others. So we're gonna meet a cast of characters here. Obviously, there's one little boy who was in that classroom. That was not taken, that did not go and or I shouldn't say taken, but didn't run away. So there's one left over, and obviously, that's a curious thing in itself. And as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, it is, it's fairly obvious he's kind of left behind. There has to be something there with him. So the teacher here, she wants to talk to the kid, but the school is kind of like saying, hey, leave him alone, whatever. The parents don't want you to talk to him, don't talk to him. She wants to talk to the parents, but the parents are also, kind of absent here. Kind of, that's a mystery in itself. So early on, you kind of follow the teacher a little bit and, kind of see her struggle through this. She's taking the blame, so she wants to know what's going on here. She's trying to get a little bit to the bottom of it, and through her, like I said, we kind of meet these characters, and then the movie gets to a certain point, and something a little crazy kind of happens, and then the movie kind of dives into one of these films where we get to follow character by character by character, learning a little bit about them and their path to this eventual point in the movie, and different paths to maybe not only the part with her, but maybe 2 or 3 other parts before the grand mystery is unvolved here of what's going on. So we're gonna go character by character and kind of learn some stuff about them and really piece a lot of the movie together. So sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work in movies, and I think it definitely works here because they leave a grand mystery behind. You really want to know, and this kind of helps kind of drag on the mystery. I saw some people say slow burn, maybe in reference to eventually finding out what is really happening here. Yeah, they're in no hurry to tell you, but I didn't really feel that the movie was like kind of slow like that, like or really laboring to get to the point. I think they kept you kind of engaged, especially with each character. Some you can kind of see why they're involved more than others. Others you have to wait till see what is really happening with them, to see how they fit in all of this. And I guess if I guess others I didn't see too many people complain, but I guess if you wanted to complain, you could see that maybe really some of this is kind of all just a distraction from getting to the point and getting to the one. Like I said, this is spoiler free, so I'm going to kind of say it. The one person who's really behind everything here. I won't mention this specifically, but obviously we really don't see this character come into play until much later in the film. So really, as if you're trying to kind of figure out what is going on here, you're really not until this person is kind of shown. And once this person is kind of shown, then and only then will where this is gonna go. And then once you find that person, then it's just what have they done to make this happen. So it's just one of those things where you might be trying to solve it and might be trying to figure it out, but you're really not. There's just no way to really figure it out until this one person is shown. You may have an idea, of guessing of where this is kind of going, but as far as figuring the actual what is happening here, you're just not until that person is going to be shown. Like I said, obviously, it had to have something to do with the one boy that wasn't taken. it just not a coincidence. So, you kind of have that and maybe a couple of other things going on. But again, you're just not going to solve it until this one person is kind of shown, and they don't show you. It's not a character that's followed until later on. So, that's, kind of the beauty of it. It's kind of sucky because you're trying to figure it out, but you're just not going to until this person is shown. I'll talk about in a minute a little bit about with that person and so forth, and stuff about that in a minute. But I think as far as the horror in this movie and so forth, I think they do a couple of decent scares. It's not necessarily supposed to a total movie jump scares from beginning to end. They do a couple of things in it. I think the best horror in it is when people basically become sort of possessed and focused to kill. And once they have a target, it's like nothing is going to stop them until they kill, or they're killed, and that's basically the only way to end it. And it kind of reminded me. You see, one or two people, they kind of go on a chase or they get motivated to kill. We had 28 years later, earlier this year, and it kind of reminded me of that, kind of having that rage-filled, infected people, and, once, they see that you're there, they're coming after you, and nothing is really going to stop them. They're just going to keep coming after you unless you kill them first. So that kind of reminded me of that. Obviously, some of them get kind of bloody in the face and their eyes are really bug-eyed. So it looks really creepy. And like I said, they're just so, motivated to kill. It's kind of crazy. So for me, you guys know that I like the blood and guts. There's definitely a couple of scenes there that would get into the blood and guts. There's a scene in the kitchen, and that was a fun scene. And then obviously with the way the movie ends and kind of the almost, the almost final scene, that's nice, fun, and bloody there. So we get a couple of decent good scares in it. We get some good blood and guts in it. So we can kind of check off those boxes. So that was appreciated there. Then, like I said, we're going to it comes down to this one person. And this one person who comes to the house of the young boy who is, was the only one not taken. And it is what this one person does in this house that kind of sets the chain of events. Now, it is a little random and a little odd, this one person, I don't, they don't go into, great depth into it. They kind of unfold that character as well, kind of like the others, showing a little bit of what's happening to the boy, through that time period of just before the kids disappear and after. And then they show the introduction of this character. But you really don't know, a whole lot. She's obviously kind of related to this family, but, they don't really kind of stand out and say it. She kind of, maybe a witch or something to that effect. Obviously, there's something going on with her, but they don't really dive hugely into it unless I missed it. But, she kind of does, I guess, some witchcraft kind of stuff. And that's kind of what, setting off this craziness. I definitely, like I said, the way the movie's structured as far as, giving you a little bit of introduction overall and kind of leading you to a point, then going through the characters, and then, bringing it all to a head, getting to the point, where they kind of split apart into the character diving, and then to this fantastic finish. So I think, it was really well structured overall. I enjoyed the way they kind of put it together. Obviously, the movie is just over 2 hours, so They definitely, took the, like I said, it doesn't, to me, it didn't feel slow burn, but definitely, they're going to do all they can and take you into all kinds of different directions before, really, getting to the point. And like I said, you really have just no idea until they release this character. And once they get to this character, then they can kind of get towards the final act of the film. And it's a great final act because, you're going to see, several of the characters kind of get too close to figuring out what is exactly going on here, finding these kids, and definitely, seeing the point of view of the one kid that wasn't taken and his role and everything. So it becomes very dramatic. There's some suspense, tension. Like I said, more craziness. There's, a great bloody ending here. So lots of good stuff, happening at the end. And once the mystery is given and whatever, it kind of fits. And, it just pieces all together really well. So, I really have, not too many, major complaints about it. I guess the thing I kind of miss in it all, and, I know a lot of people saw the movie before I did, and I saw a lot of the reviews come out, some of the early reviews, and then even, right when it opened, is the mention of comedy in this movie. And even on IMDb, the first thing that's listed here is dark comedy. I don't see it. I just, I see a lot of people mention the comedy in this movie. To say, I didn't click on any of those reviews. I didn't read, I didn't want to read anything, because like I said, this, I'm not doing spoiler free, so I probably may have ruined it for you if you, whatever, you should have listened to the warning. But I didn't want to go into, I didn't want to get any idea of what's going on, so I didn't want to read any reviews until I saw the movie. But I, just see, what people were kind of putting in their headlines for the tweet or whatever, about the movie. And a lot of people mentioned the comedy in it. I can tell you, I don't know. Maybe now that I've seen it, maybe now I will click on, one or two, to read about it. But, I didn't see much comedy in the movie. I don't know. I guess, if you want to kind of say, the way maybe some of the kids are running, or even in some of the craziness that happens, when these people are kind of become possessed to kill, maybe just, the overall of where this movie goes. I don't know. I guess there's a moment or two that, you can kind of laugh at, and early on there's a scene or two where, you might have some room to laugh, but I don't know. And I was kind of taken aback about it because I'm like, wow, I didn't expect to see, after watching the trailer kind of stuff, like people mention comedy in this movie. I didn't think that was going to be a part of it. I thought, this is going to be, a great mystery, and, we're going to unsolve something crazy here with these kids. And, yeah, so I don't really know about that, that part of it. I don't get it, whatever. I'll have to do some reading to figure that out. But yeah, definitely, I think, going all the way back to it, I think, just seeing the kids kind of run and do their weird thing. And then even other people in the movie, once they kind of, do their running thing, they kind of do this whole, like, put their arms out like they're an airplane running. It's kind of funny, that I guess is kind of funny to me. But, other stuff, I don't know. And kind of thinking about it overall, as I continue to do these reviews, I continue to think about, getting closer and closer to, and I think it was even mentioned in this movie, with the marketing is, one of the best films of the year, and I kind of discussed this with Together, and thinking about, the end of the year now, is getting closer and closer, as we go. I don't know. I don't know this one, again, for me, I don't think I've landed on one that said, that's it. That's the one that is most likely going to be number one. I certainly won't forget this one coming to the end of the year. Like I said, this is, Really good movie overall. I like the way they structured it, and the acting is good, and the mystery behind it, and definitely that final act, and especially the chase scene at the end is just excellent, fun stuff there. So definitely won't be forgotten, and I'm sure it will be on many people's list. When we get to the end of the year. So with that, I don't know that I can give it 4.5. Like while I enjoyed it, I kind of, when I get to 4.5 and 5, I really thinking that it's sparked something in me, and I'm really like, yes, that is a really excellent movie. Yes, this was a really good movie. I don't know that it got that full spark for me. So I think I'm gonna give it 4 pools of blood. I don't know what's wrong with me this year. Giving things 4.5 or 5 has just been a tough thing. But certainly really enjoyed this movie. Definitely recommend that you watch it. If you haven't and you've watched this review, I'm sorry I spoiled it for you. But it is definitely, you know I guess definitely met a lot of the hype for it, and it is a really good movie, and I guess that's to be said about that. And I definitely think the title of it becomes interesting once you see what kind of goes on in this movie, as well. So I thought that was a interesting thing to kind of think about, because it could have been several different things with the title, but definitely interesting when it comes down to it. So with all that said, again, 4.4 pools of blood out of 5 for this one. So horrorscorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all my reviews, written in video. Certainly tons of video reviews, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants you to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries. It is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below as well, so you can reach out to me there. If you want to talk about this movie, other movies, something you want me to review, please feel free to let me know. And definitely in the comment section, your thoughts on this one. And if you can explain the dark comedy in it to me in simple terms, I would appreciate it. And anything else you want to mention about this film, or you just want to reach out, feel free to do so down there. So with that, I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.